Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm here to go over my January reading wrap-up as well as my February TBR. One of my goals for this year was to get back to my old style of wrap-up videos where I would give you some statistics about my reading from the month as well as more of a mini review as opposed to just saying whether or not I liked a book. So I'm going to do that starting here with January, and I will tell you a few statistics about my month. To start off, in the month of January I read 5 novels and 2 short stories. 3 of these books I read in physical copy, then I had 1 Kindle version and 3 audiobooks. And in total this month I read 1,652 pages. The first book I read in January is Beyond the Empire by K.B. Wagers. This is the final book in her Drawn in War trilogy, which was one of my top reads of 2017. Technically I did start this book in December, but I read the bulk of it and finished it in January, so I'm counting it for the month. This was a 5-star read for me, no question. I am obsessed with this world, this writing, these characters, so good. In this book we find our main character, Hill Bristol, really in the thick of the just ridiculously dramatic and intense intergalactic political war that's been going on. Her empire is hanging on by a tenuous thread, and she at the same time is having this internal battle where she is racked with guilt about all of the lives that have been lost over the course of this battle. She feels very responsible for that and all of her people. At the same time, she knows that she cannot back down against the infamous, mysterious Wilson, who's been at the heart of all of these attacks and war and struggle that she's been facing. In this book, she does discover the identity of Wilson and has her final face down with him. One thing that I really appreciated about Hale throughout the series, but especially in this book, is her ability to highlight her emotions and to be grieving and crying over the loss of her people, to be scared. She's claustrophobic, and that comes up a lot. So she's emotional a lot, but that never takes away from her fierceness. You never question that she is just the most badass character that has ever been in a book. It's just, it's so good. And I feel like you don't see that as much, that ability for vulnerability to be empowering. So that's especially nice for a female character, and I just really appreciated that. I've said this every time I talk about these books. I love the characters, I love the relationships. There is one couple in the book and I just am in love with their love, and that gets fleshed out even more in this book. The relationship between Hale and her old mentor Howe, that gets worked out a lot more, and I loved every minute of it. It's just really lovely. The conclusion was very dramatic, as you might expect, and I had so many feels, and I was reading this on a plane and trying not to cry, but as it wrapped up, it had a very satisfying conclusion and ended on an up note, which just made me feel happy, and I cannot tell you how much I loved the experience of reading it. I will definitely be rereading this again and recommending it to everyone forevermore, so please go pick this up if you have not tried this series. After finishing up that book, I decided to start in on my picks for the Sherlock Holmes reading month, which is apparently my new tradition of just doing every January, where I read Sherlock Holmes things and post about it, and it's lots of fun. So this time I just decided to pick up with some books that I meant to read last year and did not get to, and I started that off with Moriarty by Anthony Horowitz. This is actually the second book that he wrote in his Sherlock Holmes series, the first of which is The House of Silk, and I read that last year and really enjoyed it. This one isn't really, you don't have to read House of Silk before reading this one. You could just jump into this one. This book does not actually actively involve Holmes or Watson at all. It is from the perspective of an American Pinkerton, old-timey police guy, and he has come to London because he's following the trail of an American criminal who he thinks has been masterminding with Moriarty. But after Holmes and Moriarty went off the Reichenbach Falls, he thinks that this American criminal has started to take over the entire criminal enterprise. So there's all this stuff going on, and he teams up with Athelney Jones from the Scotland Yard, and who we see in Conan Doyle's The Sign of Four. Because Watson did not show Jones in a very favorable light during the Sign of Four, Jones has developed a sort of obsession with Holmes's ways and has really wants to prove himself so much as being equal to Sherlock Holmes and able to take on these master criminals. So he is really showing that off and trying to lead the way, and they're trying to investigate all of this criminal underground network stuff. And there is a major twist. I can't talk about it, obviously, otherwise I would spoil the book. But it's fantastic. I thought this was going to be maybe like a 3-star book, but that ending, it turned out to be a 4-star for sure. I really enjoyed it. It didn't change my life forever, but I had such a fun time reading this one. It also involved a few other original Sherlock Holmes characters from the Red-Headed League, like John Clay and someone else who I'm forgetting his name, but he was also involved in the Red-Headed League. In any case, it was lots of fun. I enjoyed all of those tie-ins, and it sits now at a solid 4-star rating. The one Kindle book I read this month was also by Anthony Horowitz, and this one is called The Three Monarchs. This was just a short story that followed Athelney Jones and his investigations of a mystery. I thought it was fun, and it was a good supplemental read to Moriarty and just adding to that character of Athelney Jones, but I didn't think it was amazing or something I'm likely to reread, so I'm giving that one 3 stars. After finishing those, I decided to move on to some original stories, and I have this lovely heirloom edition of all of the Sherlock Holmes books. You can see the box is right over there with the rest of them. It's got the ribbon bookmarkers and these gorgeous, the pages are different, they're not blue on each one, but it has this silver, gold, and blue theme going on, so yes, I just them. But given that they're so cumbersome and heavy, and I'm not likely to risk them on the bus or risk my wrists while trying to hold them on the bus, I went for the audio versions. I have the collected works on Audible, so that made way more sense and was much more practical. Inspired by the Anthony Horowitz books, I decided to pick up The Sign of Four, which is one of the original novels, as well as The Red-Headed League, which is one of the short stories. I have previously read both of these, but it's probably been about 7 years or so since I last read them, so I was definitely due to go back through them. The Sign of Four I liked less than I used to, and I think that's mostly due to the fact that it has a lot of old-timey, uncomfortable racist things that they say, and that kind of dampens anything, any book if they have that. So that definitely made it go down a star or 2 for me. But one thing that I love about this book is this view at the early days of Holmes and Watson's friendship. You see Watson getting really irritated with Holmes and his just annoying things that he does, but at the same time he has this really deep respect for him. And despite their differences, you see how they really connect deeply as friends, and I really, really like that. You also see a lot of the budding of feelings that Watson is getting for Mary, who is his future wife. And I don't remember that so much from the last time I read this one, but that was something that really struck me going through this time, just all of the feelings that Watson was having and the little ways that he was catching her eye and noticed her catching his. And they got scared and found themselves holding hands and just felt so bright and natural, and it's just Watson, so cute. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. The mystery was fun, all of that was great. But those old-timey racist descriptions of some of the characters just took it down a few notches, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Next, I read The Red-Headed League, which is one of my favorite Holmesian short stories, and I think a lot of that actually has to do with, it's a really cute story in general, it's a fun mystery, I don't have problems with it so much, but I also really like the episode that they did on it in the Granada series with Jeremy Brett. I just really like the friendship between Holmes and Watson. I just find it so, just that brotherhood, that camaraderie, I just love it. I mean, obviously I also enjoy reading slash fiction of them, but I love their friendship as well, and I'm totally good with that. And this just really highlights a lot of it. It has a lot of fun moments, like they're hanging out and they're listening to this ridiculous story about this redheaded leak, and at one point they just burst out laughing, and I can't help but start laughing at that whole situation. And there's a part where they go to a concert together and Holmes is enjoying the music and Watson is kind of thinking about how great of a friend he is, and it's just, I don't know, it just makes me really happy and I enjoyed it. The mystery is also very fun, and this is the story that has John Clay, who was one of the characters in Moriarty, so hence the connection. Yeah, so I enjoyed this one, and this one I gave 4 stars. The next book I read was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and I forgot that I had this one actually because I had it on Audible. I picked it up a few months ago when it was recommended to me by Frankie at Frankie Reads, and then I totally forgot about it, but it's a perfect read for the Sherlock Holmes reading month because it does include Sherlock Holmes. It's actually a really interesting crossover of Sherlock Holmes, Frankenstein, and Jekyll and Hyde. So that's super cool, and it does it in a way that works really well, I think, where there's this whole mystery that's come about. Our main character is Mary, who's the daughter of Jekyll, hence The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and she ends up bringing a small mystery of sorts to Sherlock Holmes to see if he can help her with it. And it ends up, as these stories often do, turning into a much bigger mystery. I also really enjoyed the format of this book. It's told from the perspective of these 6 ladies who have all sort of become friends and family throughout the course of the book. They're actually writing out their story to publish, and so we are reading not just what they're writing, but we're also reading their commentary on it as they're all reading it together and writing it together and chatting about it. And that just added this really cute layer of further character development that I really appreciated, just getting to see the playfulness between them and the way that they've all developed, because also at the very beginning of the book you don't know who some of them are and what their role really is in the story. So by the time they actually come into the tale itself, we already have this knowledge of their personality and their relationship with the other ladies a bit, and so it just added this really cool aspect to it that I thought was really, really fun. The mystery itself was also really interesting. Holmes did not play quite as big of a role in this book as the ladies did, but he was still there and actively involved, and so, you know, it still totally works for the reading month. It was really fun, and I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. Then the final book I read in January was Sherlock Holmes, The Breath of God by Guy Adams. This one I actually technically finished at the very beginning of February, but most of it I read in January. In any case, I've been really looking forward to this one because it's a paranormal Sherlock Holmes, which I had not read, but I loved. It was so good. And I am really, really picky about my Sherlock Holmes pastiche books, I guess. I have such a really clearly defined mental image of Sherlock and Watson in my head and their relationship and how they talk and how they would act. So if I'm reading a modern book with these characters and they don't act like I think they should, it bugs me to no end, and it really affects my enjoyment of the story itself. This book, at first I was being kind of hard on it. I got right away that it was a little bit of a darker book and a darker take on these characters. I will say that it lightened up a bit as the book got going, but there's still some dark stuff in this book. I saw a few discrepancies, namely there was this one part where they talk a lot about how much Watson likes to eat. He likes food. And there was one part where he was specifically saying, we were eating lunch and they were talking about murder and it made me lose my appetite. And then like 2 chapters later, he specifically says he was eating breakfast and was reading about murder in the morning paper, but it didn't make him lose his appetite because he's a soldier and he's super used to that kind of stuff, so that stuff never makes him lose his appetite, but he did earlier in the book. So that immediately I was like, oh, this is not going to be the book for me. I'm not going to like this book. I love this book. I got through those couple little things in the beginning, and I found this book really sitting well with my mental image of Sherlock and Watson. And there were a lot of things in this book about their relationship and just the way that they interacted with each other that I really appreciated and felt to be more and more true to the original characters as the book went along. The story itself is just fantastic. I want to make a pun of that with PH, phantasmic. It's about ghost, basically. So Aleister Crowley, I don't know how to actually say that, but he was a real person that existed in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he was sort of infamous for his involvement with spiritualism and Satanism and magics and stuff like that. And he was a member of this organization called the Golden Dawn, as well as a few other like paranormal type organizations. And there was actually, I read a Wikipedia page about this, so there was actually some sort of internal politics within the organization where he had some disagreements with some of the other members, and that is played upon in this book, but also with like demons and stuff. And you wouldn't think that that would go well with a Sherlock Holmes story because he's so logical and earthly, and yeah, I wasn't really sure how it would play out. It totally works. And I won't say too much about the conclusion, of course, because I don't want to spoil things, but we were definitely left at the end not quite knowing what was real and what was not, and what's normal and what's paranormal. And it was just really, really fun. I enjoyed it so much. I also enjoyed reading at the very end of the book. The author had some explanations about the things that influenced the book, be they real people or already existing fictional characters, or some of the plays or movies or whatever that he was inspired by to create some of the characters and the scenes, and I think that just added a lot to it. So I really, really enjoyed this. I also really, really enjoyed the writing style in this book. There were so many points where I found myself just wanting to share a quote from the book. It was really clever. There were some good just turns of phrases that just really made me chuckle or smirk while I was sitting there reading. I just always appreciate that. So I definitely am looking forward to reading more of Guy Adams' books. This was my first read by him, so I think that it's definitely something I'm gonna have to check out on Goodreads. And this ended up being a 4.5-star read for me. As is typical for me, I talked about those way longer than I intended to, but that is everything I've read in January. Moving on to my TBR for February, I currently have 4 books picked out. The first book on my list is one I've already started in on, and that is Sherlock Holmes and the Shadwell Shadows by James Lovegrove. This was one I meant to read for last month's Sherlock Holmes reading month, but I ran out of time. However, after reading The Breath of God, I am so into this sort of like paranormal horror crossover with Sherlock Holmes. I'm just living for that right now, so I could not wait any longer to pick this one up. It had to happen, and it's happening right now. And this is, of course, a crossover between Cthulhu and Sherlock Holmes, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited to dig into that one. I've read about 50 pages so far, so I'm not too far into it. But I'm also participating in the Unicorn Readathon, which is hosted by Roya Hellbender at Unicorn Hunter Books. And I was planning on reading something else, like a dragon book, or even I have a novella about a unicorn. But I decided instead to call Cthulhu my unicorn. The only rule of this readathon is that you read something with sort of a fantastic creature in it. I would say this counts, so that's what I'm going for. And the readathon goes until the 10th. So I'm just going to really focus on this one for the rest of the week so I can fully participate in the Unicorn Readathon. My second book is one I've also started in on, and that is The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is one that we're reading for February for this More Sci-Fi Book Club. It was my turn to pick this month because it is my birthday month, so I'm very excited. And after doing the Sherlock Holmes reading month, I thought it would be fun to try something else that Arthur Conan Doyle has written that's not Sherlock Holmes. So hence here we are in this land of dinosaurs and a lost world. I thought that I had read this one. I'm pretty sure I actually have read this one before, or at least I started reading it. I have a very distinct memory of being in this frat house that I was staying in as a part of this research program I did when I was in college. And I don't know why I have this so set in my brain, but I remember laying on the couch in the frat house, reading The Lost World, listening to The Killers, and drinking Earl Grey tea. It was apparently a lovely moment that I will just forever remember. But I don't remember if I finished it. And as I'm reading through this one, some of it's familiar, some of it is only kind of familiar, so it needed a fresh read in any case. And I'm really excited to talk about it for the podcast, so you can stay tuned for some episodes on that coming soon. Then I'm also going to be reading The King of Bones and Ashes by J.D. Horn. I was sent this copy in return for a review, so I will be doing a full review video on this one later this month. I'm really excited though because I enjoy his Witching Savannah series. This is the first book in the Witches of New Orleans series. He tends to write paranormal urban fantasy where it's very much revolving around witches, and usually it seems set in these really historic southern towns, cities. So it added a really cool flavor to the Witching Savannah books, and I'm really excited to see how it plays in with this book specifically. Yeah, I've enjoyed his writing style so far, and we will see how this goes. And the final book on my February TBR is Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. This one I have in Kindle, but I'm so excited for it. It is picking back up with the Red Rising series. I thought that it was going to be the first in a new trilogy, but I keep seeing it listed as Red Rising number 4. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but be it just the 4th book in a series or a new trilogy entirely, I'm so excited. I love Red Rising. That story is amazing. Those characters, that world. I die. I'm so excited to get back into this one, and I'm planning on doing a buddy read on that one with my girlfriend Jess because we both really like Red Rising, so we're both equally excited about it. Yeah, so that will be good. That's currently all I have on my list. I imagine that I might add in a book or two at the end of the month if I have time, but I'm trying to pick a lesser amount of books each month so that I don't feel stressed about it. So there you go. That's what I've been reading, what I'm planning to read, what I'm currently reading. Let me know down in the comments what you've been reading, if you've read any of these books and what you think about them, if you have any books you're especially excited about for February or any that you just really loved in January. I would love to hear about all of it. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!